Thanksgiving is supposed to be about family gratitude and coming together. At least that is what I always believed. My name is Cyrus, and for most of my life I thought showing up and being present was enough. I thought love meant acceptance. But last Thanksgiving taught me something different. It taught me that sometimes the people who should lift you up are the ones holding you down. And sometimes life has a way of revealing the truth when you least expect it. Before I begin, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop a comment below with your location. If this story resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Stay with me, because what happened next changed everything. I grew up in a small suburban town about 40 miles outside of Columbus, Ohio. Our neighborhood was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where kids played in the streets until the streetlights came on, and where families gathered on front porches during summer evenings. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. 2 parents, 2 kids, a dog named Buster, and a house with a white picket fence. But behind that picket fence, there was an invisible line that divided our family in two. On one side stood my older sister Meredith. She was 3 years older than me, and from the moment I can remember, she was the golden child. Meredith had long auburn hair, a smile that could light up any room, and grades that made our parents beam with pride. She was captain of the cheerleading squad valedictorian of her graduating class, and the kind of daughter that parents brag about at dinner parties. Everything she touched seemed to turn to gold. On the other side stood me. I was the quiet one, the kid who preferred books over sports, who spent Friday nights writing short stories instead of going to parties. I was not bad at school, but I was not exceptional either. I was average in a family that celebrated excellence. And in a house where Meredith shone so brightly, I learned early on that my light did not matter much. My parents loved me. I know they did. But love and attention are 2 different things. My mother would spend hours helping Meredith prepare for pageants and competitions, while I sat in my room reading science fiction novels. My father would proudly display Meredith's trophies in the living room, while my writing awards gathered dust in a shoebox under my bed. It was never malicious. It was just the way things were. Meredith was the star, and I was the shadow. When Meredith turned 25, she married Derek Morrison. Derek was everything my parents dreamed of for their daughter. He was tall, confident, and worked at a prestigious financial firm in downtown Columbus. He drove a luxury car, wore designer suits, and spoke with the kind of authority that made people listen. My parents adored him from the moment they met him. To them, Derek was proof that Meredith had made it, that their golden child had found her golden match. But I saw something different. I saw the way Derek looked at people who he considered beneath him. I saw the condescending smile he wore when talking to waiters and cashiers. I saw the subtle jabs he threw at anyone who threatened his sense of superiority. And from the very beginning, I was one of those people. After graduating from Ohio State with a degree in computer science, I chose a different path than what my family expected. I did not chase the corporate ladder or seek prestigious titles. Instead, I joined a small tech startup that was working on something I believed in. The pay was modest, the hours were long, and the office was a converted warehouse with exposed brick walls and second-hand furniture. But I loved it. I loved the challenge, the creativity, and the sense of building something from nothing. My family never understood my choice. When I told them about my job, my father shook his head and said I was wasting my potential. My mother sighed and asked when I would find a real job. Meredith laughed and said I was always the dreamer who never grew up. And Derek, well, Derek just smirked and said nothing at all. His silence spoke louder than any words. Over the years, I stopped talking about my work. What was the point? No one asked, and when I volunteered information, no one listened. I would sit at family dinners while Derek dominated every conversation, boasting about his latest deals and his growing portfolio. My parents would nod along, impressed by numbers and titles they did not fully understand. And I would sit there eating my mashed potatoes in silence, invisible in my own family. But here is the thing about working in silence. Sometimes, while everyone else is busy talking, you are busy building. And that is exactly what I did. Year after year, I showed up, worked hard, and proved myself through my actions rather than my words. The startup grew. We secured funding, expanded our team, and started making waves in the industry. And as the company grew, so did my role within it. By the time I was 32 years old, I had climbed from entry-level developer to vice president of engineering. I oversaw a team of over 200 people. I had equity in a company valued at over $3 billion. I had an office on the top floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. But my family knew none of this, because they never asked. And honestly, by that point, I had stopped wanting to tell them. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was 2 weeks before Thanksgiving when my mother called to invite me to dinner at Meredith and Derek's house. Her voice had that familiar tone, the one that sounded more like obligation than genuine desire. She told me it would mean a lot to the family if I could make it. She said Meredith had been working hard on the menu and Derek had some exciting news to share. I was about to politely decline, as I had done for the past 3 years, when I heard something that made me pause. In the background, I heard Derek's voice loud and dismissive. He was saying something to Meredith, not realizing I could hear every word. "That is fine," he said, "but just so you know, if Cyrus comes, he is definitely going to kill the vibe. You know how he is. Sitting there all quiet and awkward, making everyone uncomfortable. Honestly, the guy is like a wet blanket at every family event." I waited for my mother to defend me. I waited for her to say something, anything, to push back against those words. But instead, I heard her chuckle softly and continue talking to me as if nothing had happened. "So, honey," she said, "can we expect you?" Something twisted in my chest. It was not anger, not exactly. It was something deeper. It was the realization that after 32 years, I was still the outsider in my own family. I was still the joke that nobody took seriously. I was still the wet blanket that killed the vibe. Against every instinct telling me to stay home, I said yes. I told my mother I would be there. I do not know why I agreed. Maybe I was hoping that this time would be different. Maybe I was tired of running away. Or maybe deep down I knew that something was about to change, and I needed to be there when it did. The drive to Meredith and Derek's house took about an hour and a half from my apartment in the city. They lived in one of those gated communities where every house looked the same, where the lawns were perfectly manicured, and where luxury cars lined every driveway. It was the kind of neighborhood that screamed success, the kind of place that made you feel inadequate if you did not belong. I pulled up in my own car, a modest sedan that I'd owned for 5 years. It was reliable, practical, and completely unremarkable. As I parked on the street, I noticed Derek's new purchase sitting proudly in the driveway. It was a sleek European sports car, the kind that cost more than most people's houses. I could already imagine the conversation that would follow. When I rang the doorbell, Derek answered. He was wearing a cashmere sweater and holding a glass of whiskey that probably cost more than my car payment. His eyes traveled from my face to my shoes, taking inventory of everything I was wearing. I watched his lip curl slightly before he forced a smile. "Cyrus," he said, stretching out my name like it was an inconvenience. "You actually made it. We were taking bets on whether you would show up." I held out the bottle of wine I had brought. It was a 1997 Chateau Margaux, a bottle I had been saving for a special occasion. It had cost me $400, but I thought it might be a nice gesture, a way to contribute something meaningful to the dinner. Derek took the bottle and glanced at the label. His eyebrows rose for a moment before his expression settled back into that familiar smirk. "Oh, he said you bought wine. I did not know they sold this at the grocery store." He laughed at his own joke and stepped aside to let me in. The house was decorated for the holiday, with autumn wreath-scented candles and a table set with fine china. My parents were already seated in the living room, my father watching football on the massive television and my mother flipping through a magazine. When I walked in, my father gave me a brief nod without looking away from the screen. My mother looked up, smiled thinly, and asked how the drive was. Before I could answer, Meredith emerged from the kitchen. She was wearing an apron over her designer dress, her hair perfectly styled, despite the hours she had apparently spent cooking. She gave me a quick hug, the kind that lasted exactly 1 second, and told me to make myself comfortable. I found a seat in the corner of the living room away from the main conversation. For the next hour I sat there, while my family talked around me, not to me. Derek dominated the discussion, as he always did. He talked about his golf game, his investment returns, his plans to renovate the guest house. My parents listened with rapt attention, nodding and laughing at all the right moments. When dinner was served, we gathered around the table. The turkey was golden brown, the sides were arranged like a magazine spread, and everything looked perfect. Derek sat at the head of the table naturally, with Meredith to his right and my parents flanking the other seats. I ended up at the far end, closest to the kitchen door. As we ate, I tried a few times to join the conversation. I mentioned a project I had been working on, something I was genuinely proud of. But before I could finish my sentence, Derek cut in with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Oh, come on," he said. "Nobody wants to hear about coding, or whatever it is you do. That stuff is so boring. Let me tell you about something actually interesting." He launched into a story about a client dinner he had attended, complete with name drops and exaggerated details. My parents hung on every word. Meredith beamed with pride. And I sat there, fork in hand, feeling the familiar weight of invisibility settle over me. Halfway through the meal, Derek made an announcement. He tapped his glass with his fork, demanding everyone's attention, as if he were giving a toast at a wedding. So he said, "I have some big news. I have been recruited by a major tech company. They want me to come in as a director of strategic partnerships. The salary is almost double what I am making now, and the benefits are incredible." My parents erupted with congratulations. My mother clapped her hands together. My father raised his glass in a toast. Meredith leaned over and kissed Derek on the cheek, telling him how proud she was. "Which company?" my father asked. Derek smiled, savoring the moment. He said the name of the company, slowly letting each syllable hang in the air. It was a company I knew well. It was the company where I worked. It was the company where I served as vice president of engineering. My heart stopped. For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. But then he said it again, confirming what I already knew. Derek had applied for a job at my company. Derek had been recruited to work for the organization where I held one of the highest positions. I opened my mouth to say something, but Derek kept talking. He was explaining how competitive the process had been, how they had sought him out specifically because of his reputation. He made it sound like the company was lucky to have him, like he was doing them a favor by considering their offer. Then he turned to me with that familiar smirk. "You probably do not even know what company I am talking about," he said. "It is one of the biggest names in tech. Way out of your league, Cyrus. People like you could work their whole lives and never get close to a position like the one they are offering me." Everyone laughed. My mother, my father, even Meredith. They all laughed at the idea that I could ever be in the same league as Derek. And I sat there silent, watching them laugh at a joke they did not understand. I could have said something. I could have told them the truth right there at the dinner table. I could have watched their faces change as they realized who I really was. But I did not. Something held me back. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was exhaustion. Or maybe I just wanted to see how far this would go before the truth revealed itself. After dinner, we moved back to the living room for dessert and coffee. The conversation continued without me as it always did. Derek kept talking about his new opportunity, about the salary and the stock options and the corner office he was expecting. My parents kept congratulating him, kept telling him how proud they were. At one point, Derek looked at me directly. He was holding his coffee cup with that air of superiority that I had grown so accustomed to over the years. "You know, Cyrus," he said, "maybe if you worked a little harder, you could get somewhere in life too. I could probably put in a good word for you at my new company. Get you an entry-level position or something. Everyone has to start somewhere, right?" The table erupted in laughter again. My mother tried to stifle her giggles behind her hand. My father shook his head with amusement. And I just smiled a calm smile that hid everything I was feeling inside. "Thank you, Derek," I said. "I will keep that in mind." I left shortly after claiming I had an early morning the next day. Which was true, but not for the reasons they assumed. As I drove home through the dark November night, I thought about everything that had happened. I thought about the years of being overlooked, the years of being underestimated, the years of sitting silently while my family treated me like an afterthought. I was not angry. I was something beyond anger. I was resolved. Tomorrow would come, and with it a truth that no one at that dinner table could have possibly imagined. I did not sleep well that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every laugh, every dismissive comment. Part of me wanted to be petty. Part of me wanted to call my mother first thing in the morning and tell her everything. But that was not who I was. That was not who I wanted to be. When my alarm went off at 6:30 a.m., I got up, showered, dressed, and headed to the office just like any other day. The building was quiet that early in the morning. The security guard at the front desk wished me a happy day after Thanksgiving as I badged through the turnstile. The elevator carried me to the top floor in silence. My office overlooked the entire city. On clear days, I could see all the way to the river. But that morning, I did not look at the view. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and checked my calendar. There it was, scheduled for 10 a.m. A final round interview for the Director of Strategic Partnerships position. The candidate's name was listed clearly: Derek Morrison. I leaned back in my chair and took a deep breath. As Vice President of Engineering, I had final approval on all senior hires that would work across departments. This was not a position that reported directly to me, but company policy required my sign-off on anyone at the director level or above. It was a safeguard to ensure alignment across leadership. And today, that safeguard meant I would be sitting across the table from my brother-in-law. My assistant, Jordan, arrived at 8. She knocked on my door with her usual morning efficiency tablet in hand, ready to review the day's schedule. "Good morning," she said. "You have the final interview at 10 for the director position. Conference room B. The panel will include yourself, the Chief Operating Officer, and the Head of Partnerships. All materials have been sent to your inbox." I nodded. "Has the candidate arrived yet?" Jordan checked her tablet. "Not yet. He is expected at 9:45. "Should I notify you when he checks in?" "Please," I said. And Jordan let us use my conference room today instead of B, the one with my name on the door. She looked at me curiously, but did not ask questions. "Of course," she said. "I will have everything set up." The next 2 hours passed slowly. I tried to focus on other work, but my mind kept drifting back to what was about to happen. I thought about all the ways this could go. I could be petty. I could make Derek squirm. I could use this moment to finally get revenge for years of condescension and mockery. But every time I imagined going down that path, it felt wrong. It felt like becoming the very thing I despised. By 9:40, I had made my decision. I would conduct this interview the same way I conducted every interview. Fairly, professionally, based on merit alone. Whatever happened next would be determined by Derek's qualifications, not by my personal feelings. At 9:55, Jordan knocked on my door. "The candidate is here," she said. "He is waiting in reception. Should I bring him to the conference room?" "Give me 5 minutes," I said. "Then send him in." I walked to the conference room and took my seat at the head of the table. The room was impressive by design. Glass walls, modern furniture, a view that made visitors feel small. On the door, mounted in polished steel, was a nameplate that read, "Cyrus Bennett, Vice President of Engineering." I heard footsteps approaching, confident footsteps, the footsteps of a man who had no idea what he was walking into. The door opened. Derek stepped inside, shoulders back, chin high, wearing his most expensive suit. He had that look on his face, the one I had seen 1,000 times. The look of a man who believed he had already won. His eyes swept the room, taking in the glass walls and the city skyline. Then his gaze landed on me. I watched the color drain from his face in real time. His confident posture crumbled like a house of cards. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He just stood there, frozen in the doorway, staring at me as if he had seen a ghost. "Derek," I said calmly, "please have a seat. We have an interview to conduct." He stumbled forward, his usual grace completely abandoned. His hands were shaking as he pulled out a chair. He sat down hard like his legs had given out. "Cyrus," he stammered, "I did not know. I had no idea you worked here. Listen about last night, about what I said. I am so sorry. I did not mean any of it. I was just joking around. You know how it is. Family stuff." I held up my hand. "Derek," I said, my voice steady, "this is a professional setting. Whatever happens between us as family is separate from what happens in this room. Right now you are a candidate, and I am part of the interview panel. Let us proceed accordingly." He nodded, swallowing hard. His confidence was completely gone. The man who had mocked me for years, who had called me a wet blanket, who had laughed at the idea of me ever achieving anything significant, now sat before me, looking like a child, called to the principal's office. The other panel members arrived shortly after. The interview proceeded as planned. We asked questions about strategic thinking, partnership development, cross-functional collaboration. Derek tried to answer, but his responses were scattered and unfocused. He kept glancing at me, losing his train of thought every time our eyes met. By the end of the hour, it was clear to everyone in the room that this was not going well. When the interview concluded, I shook Derek's hand and told him we would be in touch. He left the conference room in silence, a broken shell of the man who had walked in. After he was gone, the chief operating officer turned to me. "That was unusual," she said. "His resume looked so strong on paper." "What happened in there?" I shrugged. "Sometimes people are not what they seem," I said. That afternoon, I reviewed Derek's file one final time. I looked at his experience, his qualifications, his references. I set aside everything personal and evaluated him purely as a candidate. And the truth was, even without our history, he was not right for the role. His experience was impressive on the surface, but shallow underneath. He lacked the technical understanding required for cross-departmental alignment. His leadership style was authoritarian rather than collaborative. He simply was not qualified. I drafted the rejection email myself. It was professional, respectful, and honest. It thanked him for his time, acknowledged his strengths, and explained that we had decided to move forward with other candidates. There was no mention of family, no hint of personal feelings, just business. When I clicked send, I felt something unexpected. Peace. I had not used this moment for revenge. I had not humiliated him or rubbed his face in his failure. I had simply done my job, the same job I had been doing for years, while my family assumed I was nothing. The fallout came faster than I expected, than I. That evening my phone rang. It was Meredith. Her voice was different from what I was used to. Softer. Uncertain. "Cyrus." She said Derek told me what happened. I had no idea. "Why did you never tell us?" I paused before answering. "Would you have listened?" The silence on the other end of the line told me everything I needed to know. Over the following days, I received calls from everyone. My mother called, her voice thick with emotion, asking why I had kept my success a secret. My father called, and for the first time in my entire life, he told me he was proud of me. Even Derek called to apologize, though his apology felt more like damage control than genuine remorse. I accepted their words graciously. I told them I appreciated them reaching out. But something had shifted inside me. For 32 years I had craved their approval. I had wanted them to see me, to value me, to recognize that I was more than just the quiet kid in the corner. But now that I finally had their attention, I realized something profound. I no longer needed it. The weeks that followed were a period of healing. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies, but the quiet kind that happens in small moments. I started setting boundaries with my family. I stopped apologizing for who I was. I began investing more time in friendships that nourished me rather than relationships that drained me. I reconnected with old friends from college who had always seen my potential. I joined a running group and found community among strangers who knew nothing about my family or my job title. They liked me for my terrible jokes and my willingness to wake up early on Saturday mornings. That was enough. My relationship with my family slowly improved, but it was different now. I no longer sat silently at dinner tables while others talked over me. I spoke up. I shared my thoughts. And when someone dismissed me, I walked away instead of absorbing the pain. It was not about anger or resentment. It was about self-respect. As for Derek, he eventually found another job. It was not as prestigious as the one he had lost, but it was a paycheck. Our interactions at family events became civil, even cordial. I think losing that interview humbled him in a way that nothing else ever had. Or maybe he just learned to hide his contempt better. Either way, I stopped caring about his opinion a long time ago. Looking back, I realized that Thanksgiving was a turning point. Not because I got revenge or proved anyone wrong, but because I finally understood something important. My worth was never determined by my family's perception of me. It was never tied to their approval or their recognition. My worth came from who I was, what I built, and how I treated people along the way. The man who said I would kill the vibe walked into my conference room and discovered that the person he had mocked for years was more successful than he ever imagined. But that moment was not my victory. My victory was the peace I found afterward. My victory was learning to live without needing validation from people who never gave it freely. Sometimes the people who should believe in you the most are the ones who doubt you the loudest. And that is okay. Their doubt says nothing about your potential. It only reveals the limits of their own vision. So if you are out there right now feeling unseen and unheard by the people who should love you most, let me tell you this. Keep going. Keep building. Keep believing in yourself even when no one else does. Because one day you will look back and realize that their doubt was just noise, and your success, your peace, your freedom, that was always the real music. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you ever had a moment where the people who underestimated you finally saw the truth? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched you, please take a moment to hit that like button. It helps more than you know. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss future stories. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message, share this video with them. Thank you for spending this time with me. Whatever you are going through right now, I hope you find the strength to keep moving forward. And I hope you never forget that your value does not depend on anyone else's ability to see it. Take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next one.